Well, thank you, folks, for joining us on Tuesday at 7. We were on for about a minute, and then we were having a little bit of connection, so we started over. Well, we appreciate you guys joining us, and today we are with Albert Hehr, and we are going to shoot the breeze here for a bit. And the reason we chose to gather in October, specifically October 2024, is because this is a relevant month for some of the things that you're doing and for a lot of folks in our audience. But we appreciate you guys joining us. If you joined us last week, we met with Craig Peters, and Craig is a phenomenal figure drawer, portrait artist, and he had spent a year of figure drawing, and he laid it out. And we just kind of visited and heard his journey and the process. And if you guys know Craig Peters or have ever watched him draw, he grabs charcoal, erasers, and he works with two hands like this. And he creates incredible portraits, life drawing. And he's been doing it for 1 year, and he's a master at it. So thank you, Craig, for allowing us in, sharing your journey, and for the artwork. But if you shared that video last week, your name is in this hat. And actually, we chose one name before we went dark. But the first winner is Victor. Victor, thank you for sharing, and congratulations. I want to pick out Jody. Jody, you're a winner as well. Thank you. These are two folks that have not won before. So thank you both for sharing. And congratulations on your win.
Keep going for it.
Keep going. And Parma Arts Council. So we can go ahead and deliver a piece right to the building. And I think we had
Craig.
And Craig has never won a piece of artwork.
That's true.
And thank you, Craig, for sharing. He's often behind the camera, so we appreciate everybody's participation. Let me tell you just a little about Tuesday at 7. We're a Facebook group. You're welcome to join. There's about 2,000 people in the group. And for those folks who just go, we know some artists and creatives around the Cleveland area, and you might see Tuesday 7 interviews go out. We've been interviewing for 7+ years. So we're about 350 interviews in. And it's been an amazing journey for me and a phenomenal network. But we're here to talk to Albert and hear a little bit about his journey. But before I do that, if you've been watching the promos, I promoted, and this was my choice of words, and I was like, hero, Goremeister, gentleman. And those are my choices. And the reason why I chose that wasn't Albert, didn't say, hey, this is what I'm known by. That was what I chose. And the reason I chose hero was because there's some things that you're doing that are rare today. And they're probably rare, many times. And certainly that is talking about the tenets of discipline, respect, talking about... I'm here. Yep. Yep. And those things are, I think, rare today, and you're bringing them in all aspects. And so that was my choice of words, because that's certainly something that I've witnessed. And thank you for that.
You honor me. I appreciate it.
But also, it's Goremeister and gentleman, and we want to talk about that.
Okay.
Tell us. So the reason we chose Goremeister and gentleman, and then we're gonna kind of go, and we encourage you folks to go ahead and ask questions, or questions up, even if it's on a recorded session, do so. But gentleman is because you're an author and you've done a gentleman's guide.
Yes, sir.
Book number 1.
Book number 1.
And this is great. This is great not only for folks that may have never proposed a toast or never thought about tying a tie or gentlemanly things, but tell me what drove your inspiration behind writing this.
So it was a mix of things. To start with, it was a lot of my personal journey. So I was struggling towards the end of college with the group of people I was surrounded by, whether that was, think of college guys is one of the big things. You think of your frat boys, you think of some of the things that are around in a college culture. And I was struggling with it because it wasn't me. So I had the opportunity while I was in an ROTC program in college, I was in charge of a platoon that was just guys. And for anybody who doesn't know anything military, it's not often that you're just with a bunch of guys. There are plenty of women in the military that do amazing things. And so I had this unique opportunity, and we got nicknamed in our battalion as the gentleman's platoon.
Oh.
And it was fun. It was funny to me because I was jokingly sending them just a random quote a day. It was one quote, and it was very interesting to me because they started talking about it. Like, I sent one that Bob Marley said, and the first thing everyone was like, wait, did he really say that? Like, what does that even mean? That's not what we attributed to him. And as they started asking questions, I started responding, and it created this really nice conversation with a bunch of guys that, for all intents and purposes, were my subordinates and listening to things I had to say, were using my experience. And I eventually created just a document, and it was like 5 pages. That was the precursor to this book. I handed it to one of my commanding officers and said, do you think this is something of value to give to my platoon? There's 30 guys in there. Do you think there's value to this? And he said, yeah, like it's really rare. And his name is Captain Tilton. It's really rare that anybody writes down their values and why they feel them, puts their morals together. It's very rare. And I think there's a lot of value to this. You should turn this into a book. So quite frankly, that's where it came from. I wasn't going to do a book. I was just putting this document together to give some advice to a bunch of guys that are going through life, going through college, and I was giving my advice from my experience. And that's all it was I didn't do enough work at this point in college. So here you go. Here's my advice on that. It started with work 40 hours a week. Spend the 40 hours, do your homework, do that stuff.
We're going to dig more into this right off the bat. What we want to encourage folks to do is in the very bottom left-hand side of your screen, there's a share button. It's an arrow. I think on most people's phones. But when you press that arrow, Facebook will prompt you as to what to do next. You can share it to a specific individual. And some people who watch are like, this interview is perfect for this person. And so they'll share it, they'll move it to a single person. But we encourage you to share it to your friends list. We encourage you to share it to a group. There's a bunch of groups on Facebook. And when you share it, we know it. And we're going to put your name in the drawing next week. And in that drawing is going to be a signed copy.
Signed copy of the book.
And what else?
2 VIP passes to Bloodview Haunted House. You can use them at any time. If you let me know, we'll have them at will call or we'll mail them to you.
And so there's the Goremeister part. And we're going to get to that. So I know there's a bunch of folks who are being like, how does this veteran book writing gentleman, like, what does he have to do with Bloodview Haunted House? And we're going to get to that.
Of course.
We're going to get to that. And thank you guys for joining. But we encourage you to share the Gentleman's Guide. Right? So you had a platoon, right? And they were responding at least to the information, right?
Yes.
I mean, because you can give information, and if it's not relevant or there's no response to it, just kind of disappears. But there was a demand for it. Tell me a little bit about that. So, like, you're pushing it, and they were receiving it how?
So we were in a group chat, and in ROTC, we were just all talking. It's how we gave information about different training events, different fun events, anything like that was going on. So I would send in like a picture of a quote. You find them all the time on Facebook or Instagram or something. You take a picture of the quote and you post it, and everyone's like, oh, I love that quote, or I don't, or it just created conversation. And I always had the theme of stuff that was relevant to them. So I stuck with leadership, dealing with women, how to treat your friends, really simple stuff that we were encountering every single day. And they just asked about it, like, why this quote, did so-and-so really say that? Where does this come in? Because someone like Bob Marley talking about leadership was a weird one to them. But when explained that he wasn't just some of the headlines of what people know him as, that he actually had good thoughts, and it made them start thinking. And a few of them still stay in contact with me because of it.
Because of that. Do you remember what that Bob Marley quote was? Or
off the top of my head, I don't. It was just one of the first ones that popped in that someone was like, "Wait, did he really say that?" And it was one of the ones I could confirm. I wish I remembered it.
Yeah. It certainly started the conversation, right?
It did.
The Gentleman's Guide.
Yes,
you know, in terms of and Beth and I brought this from our nightstand, because when we heard that Albert wrote this, we're like, we got to check this out. And this is available
on
Amazon, right?
Yes.
So you just look at Amazon, look up A Gentleman's Guide, Rules to Live By Albert Hehr. And we'll even put the link in there if somebody wants to grab it. But this is important reading. You've distilled important information. You know, this isn't like, I'm going to read and, go through the adventures of some type of gentleman where I have to distill. Like, this is just straight out. Open the door, both physically and mentally. Open the door for friends, family, men, women, significant others, and even exes. Mm-hmm. Open the door for them to be successful and for them to achieve their dreams. You'll be a better man for it. And so these are like really great snippets. I just opened that up and, political difference, religious difference, how to handle that in a time, a really dividing time. These are important things. And I would imagine, I think that here there was Albert Hehr III.
Yeah, my dad.
Your dad, Rich, which wrote part of like the foreword, right?
Yes. So what I wanted to get information from him. And I'm currently working on the second edition of this, where I expand and I rewrote pretty much that entire section with my dad.
Oh.
Because both of us read it, and when it was published, this was also a huge learning experience for me. I'd never published a book before. I'd never gone through the process, didn't know anything. So we actually rewrote the entire section to be a conversation between the two of us.
Oh.
And I sent him a full page of, "Hey, Dad, can you answer these questions for me?" And he answered them, and then I went over to the house, sat down with him for like 2 hours, and followed up on all the conversation. Like, he gave me any piece of information, and I pulled it apart and said, "Well, why? What?" And at one point, you and I actually had one of the conversations while sitting at Dee's house. We had one of the conversations I had with him, which the difference between a good man and a nice guy. And that conversation was something that I had asked him and had a long talk with him about.
Expound upon that just a little bit.
So, nice guy to me there was a difference. When I first started thinking about it, I couldn't figure out what that difference was. And what I came to believe was that a nice guy can be an act. It can be just the words you're saying. It can be something that you're doing for the accolades of it. You hold the door in front of your parents because your parents say, "Oh, you did such a good job."
Yeah.
Versus a good man is someone of action. They're not doing it for the accolades. That's just who they are. They just do what they think is right. And that's part of what makes them a good man instead of just a nice guy. It's not an act. It's just who they are. They don't care who's looking. They just do those things.
Yeah. A good man is doing the right things when nobody's watching.
Exactly.
Right? And I guess a nice guy might be doing it only when people are watching and for the accolades of it. Yeah, that's and so you guys understand why the promo said hero, Goremeister, gentleman. So book 2 is underway. Is it coming out in 2025 or?
That is my hope. Okay. So I'm currently going through the process of getting beta readers and stuff to look over it, because one of the things I learned in this is I needed more content editing. And it's because I made some mistakes in there in either how I phrased something or the specific word I used. I made mistakes and I wanted to learn from them and get better. So now I'm going through a more intense process with it, but I've also doubled the size of it because I'm a different man from when I was 22.
Yeah. And it's impressive that this was written, at 22. I love the fact that you've got like recommended reads. So you're also calling out some authors and some books that were meaningful to you. And this is less than 50 pages
Yes.
of distilled information, which is a lot of really good information. The next one you said is
Going to be about 100.
about 100.
So the whole idea was every 3 to 5 years, I'm going to add to it, change it, because there was stuff in there that I'm like, man, wasn't quite right. And one of the easiest ones was I said shave every day. And part of that was I was in the mindset coming out of military stuff where we shaved every day. This is what we did.
Yeah.
And I went, that's not as realistic for me when I joined the workforce and I wasn't in that rigid of a structure. I was able to relax a little bit and say, well, that doesn't make a gentleman, but shaving and keeping yourself trimmed does. Looking presentable. So, facial hair wasn't the issue. It was, you got to make sure it looks good.
Yeah.
And you as someone with it definitely knows that.
You're well put together, right? You're taking time on your appearance. And you talk about that in here too, your dress. And it's, to have that suit in a suit bag and learn how to tie a tie and keep yourself kept. I know that for those of you who are watching, again, we encourage you to share. That's what is really, gets the word out, both about your books and gives the opportunity for folks to win a signed book as well as a pair of tickets to Bloodview, VIP tickets. And if you have any questions, feel free to throw them out because Beth is behind the camera. She could throw it out here live. And if it's not live and you're watching the recorded session, we can respond to that as well. So thank you for that. And Beth, anything out there? I know that there's probably some folks jumping in and
No, just hellos and there's like all backs up love you. So, oh my gosh, it's so cool that you wrote it. Paul Peterlin?
Yep. He's so there's two of them actually. There's Paul Peterlin Jr. and Senior. Junior is a squire this year for us.
There you go.
Going through the process.
And you know what? I think it's apropos, especially after that, and that is, the reason why many folks volunteer at Bloodview, who's been around for decades, is because their family.
Yes.
There was folks from their family. So tell us, is that the connector with you?
Yeah, so it actually is. So I have a lot of family that have been at Bloodview, and man, they're a bunch of family that brought people that are still there into the fold. And so it started, I believe it was my dad, my Uncle Greg, and my Uncle Art who went up, and I want to say they just wanted to try something new.
Yeah.
And they ended up going through the process of getting knighted in our group, which gives them all the special privileges, and here you can use weapons, here you can roam around and learn these things. And I remember I was like 9 years old, and my dad brought me to the haunted house for the first time and was like, let's go and act. And he took me and he dropped me in a room, and I think he came every hour and checked on me and said, okay, are you ready to be done? And I went, no, I'm going to stay right here. Yeah. And since then, I got my first year where I got good standing was when I was 12 years old. Yeah. Just a little young for the group, but I had fun.
Yeah. So for those, so break it down. So there's folks out here that'll be like, what is Bloodview? Like, give us some background on it.
So Bloodview is a not-for-profit charity haunted house. So all of the proceeds go to different charities distributed by the Lions Club to the community. So to Broadview Heights and to charities beyond that when we plan for them. So St. Jude's, Littlest Heroes, and the Autism Society were three that were picked for this year. And the whole point is we show up, we scare people, we raise money for it, and we're giving back to the community to the best of our ability.
Yeah. And for those who are part of that project, they're volunteers themselves. And so the actors, the makeup artists, the set builders, the advertisers, the musicians, the Lions Club, the Parkers. Everybody is volunteering their time, and so they're spending time. But what do those people get back? I mean, because they're volunteering for a reason, right?
There's always
there's goodwill. There is a goodwill.
There is.
I mean, that's the reason why I think it drew Beth and I for a number of years. But there's goodwill. But there's other reasons. What would you? And we're going to encourage you, the folks that are out there watching, throw that in. Why are you in? But why do you suspect that folks join?
So
And participate.
The easiest one is, man, is it a lot of fun? When you're out there and you're acting and you're putting on a show, it's a lot of fun. You'll get the people that will tell stories from when they first started, and they can tell so many stories over the years. There are people that have been coming up for 20 plus years, which is amazing. I'm 27. I can't imagine really doing anything for 20 years.
Right.
That's most of my life. And I think I have one thing I've done for that entire time. But I think the number one reason is they enjoy it. They've been able to see their own growth. You can imagine the first time you did it versus, years later, you're like, man, I got so much better at all of this. All these people were teaching me. They were taking care of me. They brought me in, and a lot of them, including myself, were misfits at different times. So they were trying to find their place, and they got accepted someplace. Yeah. And we got to have fun and raise money for charity while doing it.
Fun, social, and I think that that you use the word misfit, because I think that everybody would say, sometimes I just don't fit in, right? And I have to find a circle that allows me to practice my art, or that welcomes me. Mm-hmm. And I would say that's a unique feature. But most folks would say, Albert, really a misfit?
Yeah. So I definitely was a misfit when I first joined. I partially want to say it was because I was different than a lot of people my age. My dad always called me the little adult. I was the little adult at age 7. I got along better with my dad's friends than I did with people my own age, which is difficult because I didn't talk to a lot of people. So I had to grow up talking to my father and having weird political conversations. And I don't know if you've had a political conversation with a 12-year-old, but they don't know very much, including myself. But he still had those conversations, and I wasn't fitting in there, but I found a place that they accepted me right off the bat. No questions asked. They just said, show up, have fun. When I showed up and I had fun, they said, well, you should keep coming back. We like having you here.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that drew me to volunteer at the haunted house was it was an opportunity to learn. Mm-hmm. And so it was fun, good social circle, and the opportunity to learn special effects and improv acting was what kind of kept me coming back. So I'm like, I could have spent, I could have went to the Joe Blasco College or something, and I could have spent, thousands of dollars learning this, or I could be side by side with people who are already doing that, mm-hmm. and learn kind of as as apprentice, or, have mentors available to me. Art, strangely enough, I connected with him, back in 1991 or 92, got the year, and learned from him and from several other folks there. And I think that is a really great perk to participating there. But you're in a leadership position. You're in a leadership position. Like what inspired you, or I'm trying to think of a great descriptor word. What were you thinking?
So I wanted to be able to give back to the group. There was a little bit of that. I felt I could make a difference, and I wanted to give that to the group. Mm-hmm. Whatever difference I could make, hopefully a positive one. I'll always say hopefully a positive one. I wanted to give that back to them because they gave me a lot, from really positive memories to confidence boosts to, just a group of people that wanted to have me around. They gave me a lot. So I wanted to give back, and over my, we'll say short life, because I'm 27 years old, I've developed skills that were, I believe, able to contribute to the group as a whole and give a lot of value to them. So hopefully when I'm no longer in the leadership position, that the positive effects I've had stick with them. I don't care if I'm named for it. That's not the point of it. The point is I want them to have that positive ending from me.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that Beth and I noticed is last year, you certainly exhibited a bunch of these gentleman traits and leadership traits while working with the group. And are you what do you do for your day job? Because that all blends in as well, right? So ROTC.
Mm-hmm.
I think you shared that you had it was post college, and so what do you do outside of volunteering at the haunted house and writing books?
So I'm a manufacturing engineer. So pretty much I work for a company that makes surgically implanted feeding devices. So really precise work, they make a product that they put a lot of time in because they want to care a lot for the end user, for the people that need our product. But I do the stuff that's supposed to make everything faster, easier, flow better, whatever makes the process of making our product easier, faster, and better is a lot of what I focus on. Engineer,
Author, gentleman. I use the word Goremeister because in the pictures that I've seen some, stage blood and certainly some special effects makeup. I imagine, and you shared with us that part of the reason why you're at Bellevue was because there were, generations above you.
Yes,
that brought you there. Tell me about the effect, kind of like, let's call it like the apple of the tree. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. What is that true with in your situation?
So it depends. So my dad was a really good person for me in my life. He's done a lot to take care of me. He was not the same person at Bloodview that I am. He went up, he had his good time, and that was a lot of what he did. But the people that surrounded him, that he was close to, that I was close to being raised, were the people that did a lot with the organization. So Greg Connell was my Uncle Greg, and he was in the same position I was years ago.
Yeah.
Art Mormile was, my Uncle Art, and he was a director of makeup for Bloodview. So I'm following in their footsteps when my dad was the one that brought me up there. And my dad, I believe I can speak for him in this one, always says he wants me to exceed whatever he did. So whatever he's done, he wants me to do it better. And I think last year he said, "You've taken everything I did here and done it better than I did." And it made me very happy, but I couldn't have done it without him bringing me there.
Yeah, that's that's heritage right there. What a proud dad moment to come to that realization that your son is going, and certainly blazing some trails. As we're kind of, maybe rounding third in our conversation, again, we encourage you guys to share, because if you share it and your name is chosen next week, you get a signed copy of the book. You also get a pair of VIP Bloodview tickets. Mm-hmm. So you might be able to see the gentleman in action. And that's of great value. Is there a common thread that comes to mind if you're like, what I've realized through your years, whether it's childhood, school years, that ties what you do together?
So one of the things that has always followed me from when I was a little kid was that strive to be in a leadership position. I work a lot harder personally when I get into those positions. And I figured that out when I was really young and in marching band. So I was the band president of my marching band. And I will admit that I was a terrible leader in that position. It was my first really big scale, and I did it terribly. But it was a lesson for me on what I was doing wrong. And so every place I've gone since then, I've looked for that position. I want to improve. I want to be better. I want to find that leadership position. Again, not for any accolades. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking to add value to every single place I go. And a lot of times the way I do that is by stepping in and trying to be in charge of it for a little bit, give them any of my skill sets, any amount of my time, and give them something that benefits them.
I think I read, am I right, Beth, Albert, that part of the process, of leadership and probably, gentlemanly traits is to learn from your failures.
Very much so.
And so as a leader of your marching band, right, you're like, that wasn't my finest leadership moments, but you're exhibiting, those now. What have we forgotten to ask? Yeah, just I know what I forgot to ask, and that is the Tuesday at 7. I mean, we certainly strive for learning and discovering the journeys of creatives and artists and leaders and authors. You're engaged to somebody who's also creative.
I am.
Yeah,
I am. Her name's Lily. Got engaged this past June. She's actually currently at Playhouse Square prepping for Cleveland Ballet's showing of Dracula, which is going on this weekend. And she's working her butt off. She's absolutely amazing in so many ways. She takes care of me in ways that I truly fail to take care of myself. And figured that out really early in our relationship. She's currently taking care of all of the kids of the ballet and helping plan the academy, and with all the trainees or people that are becoming professional ballet dancers. She's a very impressive woman, and it's hard for me to say that enough.
The creative space, is that something that that you find you do together, or are you guys running different swim lanes? In other words, I know that you're probably not down at Playhouse, be part of those productions, and maybe she is or isn't part of Bloodview. But how does that creative commonality drive you guys?
We are very different people that share a lot of similar interests. So I helped her at one point. I was a stage manager for her for one of the smaller productions they did. She comes up to Bloodview and she acts with me. She's currently writing a book as well. We do different tasks, like we play Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, both of us are huge nerds in that respect, but we can also spend time reading because both of us read a lot. I'm close to 50 books this year, and she's not far behind me. I read a lot.
Why are you looking at me?
I'm looking at you because, Beth is also one. Our friends know it. She'll brush her teeth and flip a page because she reads 50 plus books a year as well.
Now the world knows.
Listen, I like reading. I'm good with it. That's what I do during my lunch break at work, is I sit down with the book and I read, and I'm like eating and reading the book. I'm going, oh yeah, that's interesting. And I'm taking notes on the other hand. And
while we're on the topic of reading, what are some of the books that are part of your 50 books this year, or ones that you'd go, you know what, in terms of the entertainment or content or leadership, these are the books that you've read that you would suggest put on a reading list?
So one of the books that I read every couple of years is Simon Sinek's Leaders Eat Last. That's an excellent book if you're looking for leadership.
Big fan of Simon Sinek.
If you're looking for fantasy books and you don't mind being somewhat emotionally hurt, I suggest reading Robin Hobb. She has a series called The Assassin's Apprentice, and it's a hard series to read because my best way to explain it is the main character goes through stuff that I remember going through, like my first terrible breakup. And she's so well painted, all of those emotions. I was going, man, I never thought I'd feel these again. The Men We Need was another one by Brant Hansen, who it was a very similar book to mine. He has a little bit more of a religious focus than I do, but if you even pulling out the religion, it still has such a beautiful message and how to be involved and how to be a man in society today, especially when there's some challenge as to what that means. And that was a very special book to read, and I got sent it by my future sister-in-law. She sent me a book for Christmas, and I was like, okay, now I'm going to read it. And when I read it, I was like, this was amazing, and it's actually in my recommended reads for the next version.
The next version. I know that there's a bunch of people out here that are watching, because often the Tuesday at 7 audience hits thousands of people in a week or so. So because we're also a community, we encourage you guys to share a book that's of particular interest or inspiration to you as well. It'd be kind of cool to get 10, 20, 30 books of people who are just going, this is really important to me as well, and just kind of connected to.
I promise I'll read them too. If you put books in there, I'll read them. I'll get to them.
Guys, we appreciate you
very much.
You joining us. Albert, we appreciate you sharing your journey as an author, as a leader, as a haunted house actor. I'm going to ask, kind of one more, just want to capture one more thing, and that is, you were saying that Lily wrote a book, is in the process of writing a book, that you wrote number 1, you're looking at number 2. There are some folks that are going to be inspired by just that, to say, I think I have something to share, and it's something that I want to put down in a format that is tangible. Give us a high level, like, what would you say to an author who is, or a potential author who is looking to share something, or perhaps just be a writer, right, of fiction or whatever? What would you say? Because you've already gone through the process. What did you learn, and what can you share with us?
Make sure somebody else reads it and really looks for your mistakes. I mean, you don't get offended when they say, man, this was dumb. Don't do this. This was not right. Your first step is write it down, though. Just start writing, start typing it out, get it on paper, because that step does a lot more than most people will do. So because I had the leg up as I was already writing it to send it to people, I had started that process, and I just continued with it. But the first step is getting it started. And that's probably your most important step, is to just put the words on paper. You can do all the editing and everything else later. It comes through the process. But getting it on paper is something only you can do, and only you can do effectively.
So you've got your writing, you've got your editors, your trusted beta readers. Then what happens? How do you take it from your format, to getting it purchased, getting it down on Amazon? Is that something is that a difficult process?
So it depends the route you go. So you can always self-publish, and that's a route you can go, that you're funding the whole thing, you're designing the cover, you're doing all those things. You can go to the kind of the in-between, where you pay a publisher to do a lot of those steps, including getting your IP and all that kind of stuff, so that way it has the barcode and stuff on the back. And then there's the more traditional publishing, where you send it to a publisher and they run with it, they believe in it, they put it down on paper. So I went with the second step for my first one, as I went to a publisher that said they were going to pick it up. I put money into it to get us through the process, and they say, we don't take a cut until you make all of your money back. And that was kind of the middle ground in between. For the next version, I'm looking at a publisher that's not that route. We believe in it, we're going to put up the money and hope and try and make our money back. But sending it to a publisher is what's important. Getting it out there, Some will say no. Some will say this isn't for us, and that's okay. You want to find the publisher that believes in you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Albert, for joining us today. Thank you guys for joining us this October 2024. If you haven't already shared, that is something that is of great value to our community. And those are acorns coming down on top of your
My sunroom.
sunroom.
It's fun.
But what we want to do is remind you, if you share it, you have the opportunity to win a signed book. If
Sure.
we draw your name next week, you have signed book and also a pair of Bloodread tickets. So thank you guys for joining, and we'll talk to you guys next week.